Hey everyone! For this week's fundamentals, I'm going to be going over everything to do with the basics of using text in After Effects. To get into your text options, first let's open the Character panel. This panel holds the actual settings for your text, which will be the same here as they would be in Photoshop, Illustrator, GIMP, or pretty much any graphics or video program. Some will have more controls, some less, but this is a standard. At the very top, we've got our Fonts menu. This will give you the option to choose any font you have on your computer, which is the type of text you'll be using. This would be Arial or Times New Roman for the most common example. Under that is the Font Style menu. For my example, I'm using the font I use for all of my brand's body copy, Bookman Old Style. When I click on the menu under that, I have the options to change it to its regular, italic, bold, or bold italic styles. Depending on the font family you've picked earlier, you might have just one style or you might have over a dozen. To the right of these menus is the color picker. If you want black or white text, you can click on these colors in the little strip at any time. You can also pick any color that you can see in the window using the eyedropper. Click on this tool once and then move your cursor to whatever you want to take the color from. This can be other text, a graphic, or even your AE interface. Lastly, you can manually select the color by clicking on the boxes to the far right. The top box will be your fill color or the color inside of your text. If you have a color in the lower box, that will be your stroke or the colored line around your text. You can also click the small curved arrow above them to swap your stroke and fill colors. Next up, we've got controls for the look of your text after you've picked your font and color. On the left is our font size or how big the text is. If you click on the number, you can type the size, measure it in points, manually. Or, like most things in the Adobe suite with numbers like this, you can click on the number and, holding down the click, drag to the sides. Dragging left or down will lower the number, and moving right or up will increase the number. On the side of that is the icon with two A's and a line between them. This is your leading, which is the space between your lines of text. The higher the number is, the further apart one line's bottom will be from the next line's top. Under those, we've got our kerning and tracking. These both change the spacing between your letters. Kerning, which is the V/A icon, will only change the spacing between two characters at a time, unless you've selected all of the text, in which case you can only change it to automatic or optical. Tracking, on the other hand, will change the spacing between all letters in a selection. After that are the stroke options, represented by 3 bars. If you have a dash next to that icon, it means you don't have a stroke and you can click on it to change that. If you do have a stroke, the menu to the right will be usable. By default, this will say stroke over fill, which means your stroke will cover part of your letter. The higher the stroke width, the more the stroke will cover. If you change this to fill over stroke, however, the letters will be on top of your stroke for each letter. What I mean by that is that if you have close together text, the strokes will still overlap. See how in my example, the stroke around the T at the end covers part of the S, and that S's stroke covers the E? That's what I mean. If you don't want this, change the stroke to all fills over all strokes instead, which will put the stroke of each letter at the very back of the text. The next 2 options are our vertical and horizontal scales. By default, these will both be at 100%, but you can change these numbers to stretch the text to be taller, shorter, wider, or thinner. As a general rule of thumb, it's not a good idea to stretch your text like this, but this is animation where those rules are a lot more relaxed. Under those, on the right side, is the baseline shift. In typography, your baseline is the imaginary line all of your text sits on, and you can, as the name suggests, shift your text to be higher or lower than that line. You can also do this change, as well as all the others I've gone over, on individual letters in your text. Generally, it doesn't look good, but again, this is animation, not graphic design, so have fun with it. And the very last setting is the Sume. Honestly, I don't know why this exists. Sume is a way to compress your text so the box around each letter is larger or smaller to reduce the spacing. I'm sure someone somewhere has a use for this over tracking and kerning, but that person isn't me. We also have another window for our text in the paragraph window. This one's much faster. At the top, you have icons with a number of lines. These icons let you set your text to be aligned to the left, center, or right. If you've made a text box, you can also justify your paragraphs with the other 4 icons, which will evenly space all of your text so each line is the same length. Under that, we've got indent options. The icons with the lines on the left and right, seeming to push everything in, are the left and right indents, respectively. These will move your entire paragraph away from the respective side of your text box. You can also add space above and below each paragraph with the icons that have arrows on the top and bottom. Lastly, the icon with an arrow pushing in the top line will add an indent to only the first line of your paragraph and only from the left side. Though you can use negative numbers here to move it further left if you want to, as well as using negative numbers for the spaces before and after each paragraph. Now that we know all the settings for the text, we're set to actually add the text. To do that, click on the T icon up at the very top, or type Command or Control T. This will make the text tool active. You can then click anywhere in your composition to start a text layer. Then you just start typing. If you click and drag instead of just clicking, you can also make a text box. Once you have your text, let's look at the settings by clicking on the small white arrow at the left of the layer down in the timeline. This will show that just like any other layer in AE, we can do the standard transformations. We also have the text properties, which will be more relevant here. First up, we've got our source text, which is the text we're using. We can actually use one text layer for multiple pieces of text throughout an animation. I do this all the time for all the tips I show in a given tutorial. To do it, click on the stopwatch next to this and move forward in the timeline a few frames. You can then click on the text in your comp, or you can hit the small diamond icon on the far left of your layer. This will make a new keyframe, which you can then double click on to select all of your text. It should be noted that source text doesn't animate the way most things do. There is no transition from one keyframe to another. Instead, it will instantly change into the other text when you pass over the next keyframe in the timeline. If you want to animate your text changing, you'll need to use some of the other things we'll be covering here, or fake a transition using the transform properties. Under that is our path menu. By default, there won't be anything here for us to use. To make a path, use the shape or pen tools with your text layer active. If you make a shape outside your text may disappear because it's now been masked out. Either way, once you have your shape on the text layer, go back to that menu and you should now have more options in the list. Pick the shape you want your text to be on, and now all of your text will be aligned to the shape you've made. Next comes the reverse path toggle. When this is off, your text will be aligned to the inside or top of your path, depending on what the path is. Reversing it will then flip the text to the other side, if you have the perpendicular to path option on anyway. With this option on, your text will follow the curve of the path, while turning it off will make it so the text is always completely vertical, and it will just move along the path. The next option is whether you want to force alignment. This will make your first letter start at the very beginning of your path, the last letter at the end, and all of your other layers will be spaced evenly between the two. You can also change where the start and end of your path is, for your text anyways, by increasing or decreasing the first and last margins. Changing these numbers will push your text left or right along the path, and will change the text spacing with the forced alignment active. And lastly, for the text itself, we have more options. The first of these is anchor point grouping. This setting controls whether the anchor point being used for all animations and transformations is the one inside each letter, word, the lines of your text, or the text as a whole. Under that is the fill and stroke menu. This works the same way as the stroke options I went over earlier, letting you set how your fills and strokes work together in the text. And lastly comes the inter-character blending. With overlapping text, this setting lets you change the blending mode of your overlapping strokes and fills, giving you a bit more control over how it looks together. Finally, let's get into doing some actual animation. To start animating, click on the small button next to the word Animate up at the top of your text layer. Everything in this menu is a setting you can animate. Quite a few of these I've already gone over. Our first animated property is the Per Character 3D option. This will give 3D properties to all of the characters in your text, letting you do Z-space animations. This will go together with the transform properties, which are the exact same as the transform properties layers usually have. The only difference here is that you also have an option to skew your text, which will slant it to the right or to the left if you use negative numbers. You can also add all transformation properties at once. Since I've already gone over them, I'll say you can also animate the text, stroke, and fill layers and leave them at that. Though in this menu, you actually have the option to choose the color mode being used, going from RGB to hue, brightness, saturation, and opacity. You can already do all of this under the transform properties, but here you can go on a basis of character, word, or line as you animate. Under those, we have the option to animate the stroke width as well. As I've described earlier, you can also animate the tracking here. This can be controlled further with the line anchor settings. This controls the alignment for each line of your text, where 0% means it's aligned left, 100% is right, and everything in between moves towards one or the other. You can also change the spacing between each line on any text that has more than one line with the line spacing property. This works the exact same way as leading. Next, there are the character offset and value controls. Both of these will change your characters using Unicode symbol numbers. These are every symbol a computer can produce, broken down into a series of letters and numbers. To save time, I've just linked to a map of all the Unicode letters down in the description. Where the two properties are different is how they change your text. Offset will change each character in your text, shifting it up or down in Unicode by the number you've set. Value, on the other hand, will shift every character to the same symbol using the number you've set. Lastly, we have blur. This will give our text a Gaussian blur, with the ability to use both vertical and horizontal blur separately and together. When you add any of these, your text layer will get a new submenu named Animator 1. This is where the magic happens, and you can actually use everything I've gone over so far for awesome text effects. An animator is made of two parts: the property or properties being animated, and the selector, or the way it's being animated. By default, when you add any of the items under the menu I just went over, your Animator 1 will have the property you added, or properties in the case of all transform properties, and another property called Range Selector 1. This is where you can control how your animation will apply. A range selector will give you options to control how far from the start and end of your text an animation will be. It can also set an offset, so a certain part of your text is already moved through the animation, which will change how fast your text moves from 0 to 100% animated. To animate it all, add whichever property or properties you want and change them. Then, click the stopwatch next to your range's start, end, and/or offset. Move forward in your timeline and change the percentages. Now go back to the start of your timeline and click 0 or spacebar to play your animation. Range selectors also have advanced options. I won't go over all of them here because this is a video on the basics, but you won't really find a day-to-day use for a lot of them, at least I haven't. But there is one control under here that comes in handy even when you're just starting your text animation. This control is the Based On menu. It lets you change if your animation will go by the characters, words, or lines in your text. This, combined with the range, gives you a lot of control over your text's animation. You might also notice next to your Animator 1 that there's another button to add, like we used to make it in the first place. This lets us add more effects that'll animate as our range goes. We can add as many as we want. but we can add even more control to the animation. Right now, if we add properties to Animator 1, everything we add to it will animate at the same time. If we want to add a bit more motion to things, we can instead go back up to the top of our text layer and add something else from the animate property. This will add animator 2 and up, and we can do the same things as before. But if we change the timing for our range in the animators, our effects will happen at different times and add more variety if done well. And that was all about the basics of text in After Effects. I hope everyone's learned something and had fun doing it. If you have any questions, thoughts, or other feedback, you can let me know with a comment below or with a message to @ET_studios on Twitter. You can also like this video and share it around. I'd appreciate help getting the word out. And I'm planning to be back here every Friday, so be sure to subscribe for more awesome content. Have a great day, everyone.